Life has a way of throwing emotions at you when you least expect them. Some moments catch you completely off guard, no matter how much you've lived or what you've experienced. This is about one of those times for me. At 62, I've learned many lessons, but life has taken its share from me too. Drew was my everything, a vibrant soul who lived for flying. For me, that meant constant worry until the day my worst fear came true. He's been gone 10 years now, lost in a crash, leaving me with just our son Derek as my connection to him. Derek's 36 now, a successful engineer who makes me proud every day. But sometimes he gets so caught up in his own world that I feel like a ghost in my own home. His best friend Brendan, 38, has been like family for years. Maybe it's because Brendan's a pilot too, just like Drew was to Derek. He's more than a friend. He's a living piece of his father. Brendan's always been kind, always checking in even when Derek's away. When Derek mentioned his week-long trip last month, I had no idea how much that week would change things. With Derek gone, I found myself spending unexpected time alone with Brendan. One afternoon, returning from the store with bags in hand, I couldn't find my keys anywhere. Just when I was feeling completely helpless, Brendan pulled up in his car with that easy smile of his. After helping me get back inside, we sat down for coffee, just the two of us, which felt different without Derek there. The conversation turned personal in ways it never had before. Brendan shared about his failed marriage 4 years back, and I saw a vulnerability I hadn't noticed in him before. We talked for hours about everything: Drew, Derek, even Brendan's childhood. For the first time in years, I found myself really opening up about losing Drew. As Brendan was leaving that night, he paused at the door and turned back for a hug. What started as a simple goodbye became something much more powerful. In that embrace, I felt something shift between us. An electricity, a connection I hadn't felt in years. The way he held me just a moment longer than necessary, the way our breathing synchronized. It was as if we both realized something at the same time. That hug changed everything, though neither of us said a word. Some moments don't need words to be understood. The tension between us was undeniable, pulsing through both our bodies with undeniable force. When he finally stepped back, breaking the contact, his gaze remained heavy with unspoken meaning. "Good night, Lily," he murmured, his voice still thick with emotion. I simply nodded in reply, my pulse hammering as the door clicked shut behind him. An odd hollowness settled in my chest, mingled with a restless anxiety I couldn't quite define. Though I didn't fully understand the significance of that embrace, its effect only intensified as time passed. Several days went by, yet the memory of Brendan's arms around me and the charged look in his eyes refused to fade. I wrestled with my conflicting emotions, attempting to push aside concerns about our age gap and my obligations to my family. That fleeting connection seemed to alter time itself, leaving its mark on every passing moment. Now, traces of Brendan lingered everywhere, and no matter how hard I tried to rationalize my feelings, thoughts of him only multiplied. Resisting what I felt was becoming impossible. When Derek called one evening to say his business trip would extend another week, I expected to feel abandoned. "I didn't want to leave you alone this long," he apologized, "but work keeps piling up." Normally, his absence would leave me desolate, yet this time an unexpected calm settled over me. Some unnameable shift was occurring, and for once, life seemed to be aligning in ways I couldn't explain. Days later, as I pulled out of my driveway, my car sputtered and died without warning. Stranded on the quiet street, panic rose in my throat. Only one person came to mind. "Brendan?" My voice wavered between distress and hopeful anticipation when I called him. My car just stopped working, and with Derek away. After a brief pause, his steady voice replied, "Don't worry, Lily. My flight was cancelled. I'll be right there." When Brendan arrived, his presence sent an unfamiliar warmth through me. As he examined the engine, his fingers blackened with grease, he flashed a knowing grin. "This might take a while." His effortless competence wrapped around me like a security blanket. I lingered nearby, mesmerized by the fluid precision of his movements, the way his capable hands manipulated tools with practiced ease. Each motion was like poetry, natural and assured. Years of solitude had hardened me, yet now something was undeniably shifting. Every glance, every sound, every passing second thrummed with new significance. I'd never considered how appealing a man could look while repairing a car, or how extraordinary ordinary actions could become. My gaze kept drifting back to him until I had to suppress a growing smile. After making the final adjustments, Brendan wiped his hands and turned to me. "All set," he announced, though his eyes held a question I couldn't interpret. "Thank you," I began, but deeper gratitude swelled beneath the words. "But look at you. You're covered in oil. You should clean up before heading home. Maybe a shower." His eyebrows lifted slightly, but a slow smile spread across his face. "Yeah, I could use one," he admitted, glancing down at his stained clothes. "After all that, relaxing sounds perfect." Relief fluttered in my chest. Inviting him in suddenly felt not just permissible, but necessary. "This way," I said, leading him inside, hyper-aware of his proximity. The heat radiating from him sent sparks skittering through me. While Brendan showered, I busied myself in the kitchen, though my thoughts raced uncontrollably. His presence seemed to fill the entire house, making every movement feel charged. As I cooked, emotions overwhelmed me, and before I knew it, I'd pulled out wine glasses, something I rarely did. The unfamiliarity of the gesture thrilled me even as nerves twisted in my stomach. By the time the water shut off, anticipation coiled tight in my chest. The evening stretched before us, ripe with possibility, and for the first time in years, I wasn't fighting the current pulling me forward. As Brendan emerged from the shower, a quiet calm surrounded him. His damp hair clung to his forehead, his relaxed posture and simple clothes making him seem completely at ease. The natural comfort in his expression drew me in even deeper. "Something smells incredible," he remarked, approaching the table while drying his hair with a towel. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble, Lily." "It was nothing," I replied, unable to hide my enthusiasm. "Make yourself comfortable. Everything's prepared. I hope you enjoy it." When he moved closer, our gazes locked, and the world seemed to pause around us. An undeniable current passed between us, growing stronger with each passing second. The dining table before us held more than just a meal. It bore witness to the unspoken tension thickening the air. Brendan lifted his wine glass, took a slow sip, then met my eyes again. "You should have some too," he suggested softly. "After today, we've earned a moment to unwind." Our eyes remained connected as a soothing warmth spread through me. I reached for my glass, wanting to fully share this experience with him. For once, I let my thoughts fade into the background, simply savouring his company. Dinner passed in easy conversation, Brendan sharing light-hearted stories from his life while I reminisced about days gone by. Between laughter and comfortable silences, an undercurrent of intensity remained. Our hands grazed accidentally several times, each brief contact amplifying the electricity in our exchanged glances. As I began clearing the table later, Brendan's fingers brushed against mine and lingered. When his palm settled gently on my forearm, the emotion in his gaze spoke volumes. My pulse quickened as the space between us seemed to shrink. The tenderness in his expression kindled a new warmth within me, one I'd never experienced before. Though we stood mere inches apart, the moment stretched endlessly, yet I didn't hesitate. Almost without thinking, I closed the distance between us. Brendan retreated half a step before meeting me with a smile. "You're truly beautiful, Lily," he murmured, his voice rich with certainty. The words sent a thrill through me, and when I searched his eyes, I found all the confirmation I needed. "You're extraordinary too, Brendan," I whispered back. "Being with you feels inevitable." A hush fell over us as something shifted irrevocably. When I stepped forward this time, Brendan's hands found my waist, his touch igniting my racing heartbeat. As he drew me against him, every lingering gap disappeared. Our emotions, our bodies, everything merging seamlessly. We stood motionless for a breathless instant, watching the spark between us erupt into flames. Then we were in each other's arms, lips meeting in a slow, consuming kiss. Time lost all meaning, years of solitude dissolved in that single touch. Every hesitation, every lonely night, all converged into this perfect moment with Brendan. This didn't feel fleeting. It felt eternal. Lost in each other, we moved down the hallway, shedding clothes between fervent kisses, our breathing shallow with need. By the time we reached the bedroom, nothing else existed. Just Brendan's hands, his mouth, the overwhelming rightness of our connection. When he pulled me to him again, all pretense vanished. We were wholly each other's, the outside world erased. His touch transported me, every caress, every kiss deepening our bond. The night slipped away in tangled limbs and whispered intimacies. Before sleep claimed me, I saw my own feelings mirrored in Brendan's eyes. Morning light filtered through the curtains when I awoke, painting golden streaks across Brendan's sleeping face. A profound realization settled over me. I wasn't alone anymore. His presence filled spaces I hadn't known were empty. As his eyes fluttered open, a slow smile curved his lips. "Good morning, Lily," he murmured, voice thick with affection. "Good morning," I replied, smiling back. "Last night was perfect," he finished, drawing me into another kiss. Wrapped in his arms, everything felt exactly as it should be. Yet when we parted, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. "Lily," he began, tone turning serious, "was this just one night, or is there more?" My heart stuttered. I didn't have all the answers, but one truth burned clear. "This is only the beginning," I admitted softly. "I want to explore what we could be." Brendan's arms tightened around me as he smiled. "I want that too." "I want you." "Lily, I want to discover what we could build together." In that instant, I sensed the potential shining before us, though uncertainty still lingered about what tomorrow might bring. The only certainty was our desire to stay together, and for now, that sufficed. Life presents crossroads where a single choice alters everything forever. You reach a point of no return, standing at the threshold where your new reality begins. That night marked such a turning point for me. For what felt like eternity, days, weeks, years, solitude had been consuming me. At 54, my spirit felt decades older. My marriage contained no tenderness, no fire. Albert hadn't touched me in ages. My 65-year-old husband passed his days napping on the living room sofa, nights either sleeping in his study or occupying himself elsewhere. Watching him age was painful, but I was fading too. Trapped within these walls, my frustration festered into despair. I longed to shatter the silence, to be seen. But Albert remained oblivious. That's why I finally dialed Hector's number. Albert's nephew, 27, vibrant, and the sole person who truly saw me. When he answered, my voice quivered, but my resentment held steady. "Hector, come handle your uncle. I'm leaving." Did I mean it? Or was I hoping someone would intervene? Albert wouldn't, but Hector. His tone shifted immediately. He understood my isolation. We'd discussed it often. Hours later, finding Albert still dozing on the couch, his apathy stoked my fury higher. But Hector went straight to my bedroom where I trembled while packing, burdened by rage and heartache. A quiet voice wondered, was this genuine departure or just a cry for attention? The door creaked open, revealing Hector. Concern filled his gaze, but something more lurked beneath. "Diana," he said firmly, "don't go. I know it seems hopeless, but we can fix this." I turned away, continuing to pack, though my defiance wavered. "Fix what?" I murmured. "Albert wouldn't notice if I vanished." Hector edged closer with a sigh. "Don't say that. You know what's been happening between us? It's not just talking anymore, is it?" I stiffened. He was right. Our recent interactions carried unspoken tension we'd never acted upon. When I finally faced him, his expression had changed. That look. Hector wanted me. His mere presence electrified rooms. At 27, he radiated vitality, broad-shouldered, sharp-jawed, yet with a gentle smile that contradicted the hunger in his eyes. He alone reawakened sensations I'd forgotten. My status as Albert's wife didn't deter him. His lingering glances, the barely audible sighs he thought I didn't notice, confirmed it. He reminded me I remained desirable. I wasn't blind to my own reflection either. Time had been kind, my complexion still glowed, my figure maintained its curves. Only Hector truly acknowledged this. Now he was stopping me, yet not stopping me at all. Suddenly, my anger and loneliness transformed into something else entirely. As his fingers brushed mine, his voice dropped to a husky murmur. "Don't do this, Diana. I'm here. If you leave now, it won't be for the right reasons." My breath hitched, the suitcase forgotten. I wasn't staying for Albert. The way Hector's smouldering gaze pinned me in place, the shrinking distance between us, something ignited within me. Tonight would change everything, though I couldn't yet foresee how. The emptiness that had hollowed me out was filling with Hector's nearness. My decision crystallized. I wouldn't leave. But not for Albert. Never for Albert. The last thing I needed was anything from Albert. Hector caught the shift in my mood instantly. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. He thought he'd gone too far. "Listen, Diana," he began hurriedly. "Maybe I should speak with Albert, try to work things out." I interrupted him firmly. "No, Hector." My voice stayed steady this time. His eyebrows rose in surprise. "But you just said—" I inhaled deeply and methodically reopened my half-packed suitcase. Hector watched me intently, pausing before responding. "Do you honestly believe," I said pointedly, "that I'd grovel for scraps of affection from a man who's meant nothing to me for years?" "That chapter is finished, Hector." His eyes dropped to the floor as my words landed heavily. After a slow nod, he murmured, "All right, I understand. But Diana, you've always deserved better. You're intelligent, beautiful, the way you've been overlooked." His voice trailed off, but I didn't need him to continue. I already knew. "Albert," I said quietly, "is leaving Saturday, 2 days from now. Until then, pretend this is just a casual visit." Hector's forehead creased in confusion. "Why?" he asked. Moving closer, I wanted him to grasp that I wasn't afraid of these newfound feelings. "Because I want to explore this with you first," I told him, and with those words, everything between us transformed. For those 48 hours, Hector played his part flawlessly. The dutiful nephew paying a brief visit. True to form, Albert remained completely oblivious. Each passing hour felt like torture. The forced small talk, Albert's pretend normalcy, watching Hector's quiet resentment build. Even now, remembering those days makes my chest constrict, such wasted time. But Saturday was what truly mattered. At dawn, Albert packed with unusual enthusiasm. Never before had he been so eager to depart. "No, I'm leaving." Just like always, he moved through life as if I were invisible. Hector left early to drive him to the airport. I expected a quiet return, but I'd misjudged. When Hector reappeared that evening, the change was palpable. Normally, his gaze held warmth when he looked at me, but now his eyes blazed with fury. "Diana," he said tightly, still wearing his coat as he strode toward me. I remained seated, unfazed. "What happened?" Hector ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "You were right," he spat, as if still digesting the truth himself. "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. He exhaled sharply before the words tumbled out. "He's coming back Monday morning, flying out to go hunting with some old friend, just like the old days." Albert's typical thoughtlessness didn't shock me, but for Hector, this was the final straw. I noticed his clenched fists, white-knuckled with rage. Whatever lingering respect he'd held for his uncle had evaporated completely now. A bitter laugh escaped him as he struggled to contain his anger. I simply smiled. "I told you," I said quietly, because no further explanation was needed. That night, Hector returned to me fundamentally changed, and we both understood exactly what that signified. Hector exhaled sharply, avoiding my eyes. Diana, I can't keep making excuses for him. I'm sorry. I've tried seeing the good in Albert, but continuing would just be lying to myself. His words settled in my chest like lead, but I had no interest in rehashing Albert's failings. With a light smile, I suggested, "Forget about him, Hector. Let's have some beers and just talk normally. I don't even want to hear his name right now. Being with you, it helps." The anger in his eyes softened to comprehension as he nodded and moved to the fridge. Rising from the couch, I let my skirt ride up just slightly, almost imperceptibly. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Hector's gaze dipped for a fraction of a second before he jerked it away, but I'd seen it. Electricity crackled between us as he passed me an icy bottle, our fingers brushing deliberately, that fleeting contact sparking something irreversible. The cold beer cooled my lips while warmth pooled in my stomach. After years of restraint, I no longer cared to hold back. Talking with Hector did ease me initially. Our shared grievances about Albert giving way to lighter topics, shared memories, absurd stories, uncontrollable laughter. Before we knew it, the alcohol had loosened us both, and I couldn't recall the last time I'd laughed so freely. All my bitterness, the hollow ache of isolation, the crushing letdowns, everything melted away in Hector's presence. Eventually, we set our drained bottles aside and settled onto the sofa together. The pleasant alcohol haze, combined with the warmth spreading through me, made me scoot nearer to Hector than propriety allowed. Far nearer than I should have. But I couldn't bring myself to care. Hector turned toward me, that familiar smile still playing on his lips, but his eyes now held something new, a magnetic tension begging to be released. He sensed it too. We both did. Twirling my bottle absently, I met his gaze. The gentle intoxication made me want to voice every hidden feeling without restraint. "You know, Hector," I murmured, leaning in just a fraction closer, "I'd forgotten how much I enjoy our talks. You actually make me happy." His throat worked as he swallowed, but his smile remained. "You make me feel good too, Diana," he admitted, his voice carrying an unspoken weight he was clearly struggling to contain. But I had no such reservations. With sudden boldness, I asked the question that would change everything. "Tell me, Hector, is there someone special in your life?" His grin widened slightly, as if he'd anticipated this. "What exactly are you asking?" he countered, one eyebrow quirking upward. I shifted even closer until our legs nearly touched. "What I mean is," I said, setting my glass down and turning fully toward him, "do you feel alone too, Hector?" A loaded silence stretched between us. He glanced away, giving a slight nod but remaining silent. Something powerful stirred within me. For once, I held the reins and I refused to wait any longer. Tilting my head, I softened my voice. "So there's no woman?" "No one who desires you." His fingers twitched against his sweating glass. He clearly both dreaded and relished this conversation. Tonight, neither of us could escape the truth. Hector exhaled deeply, avoiding my eyes as he set his bottle down. When he spoke, it sounded like a long-buried confession. "I've been by myself for years, Diana." Hearing my name in that rough tone sent a jolt through me. "And if I'm honest, the only time I feel alive is when I'm with you." His words hit me like a tidal wave. A truth that had been building for months, maybe years, finally set free. Studying his face, I saw my own feelings reflected in his eyes. Tracing the rim of my glass absently, a slow smile curved my lips. There was no use pretending anymore. "Hector," I said deliberately, "don't we both deserve happiness? Maybe this is exactly where we're supposed to be." His jaw clenched, hands balling into fists before relaxing. The intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. Finally, he could hold back no longer. "Diana," he rasped, voice deep yet trembling slightly with pent-up emotion. "You know, don't you? I can't pretend anymore." "And you're not running either." Everything stilled. I understood perfectly. I wasn't fleeing. I couldn't. Without hesitation, Hector's hands cradled my face, thumbs brushing my cheeks as our eyes locked. Then his lips claimed mine in a kiss that unleashed every suppressed desire, every unvoiced longing, every ignored spark of attraction that had simmered between us for so long. A small part of me wondered how we'd reached this point, but it no longer mattered. There was only Hector's heat, his strong hands, this all-consuming moment. My fingers instinctively wove through his hair as I kissed him back with equal fervour. I wanted this, wanted to lose myself completely in his embrace. When I rose to my feet, not a shred of doubt remained. The fire between us had become an unstoppable force. "We both need this," I whispered shakily, setting my drink aside. My fingers found the straps of my dress, sliding them down slowly until the fabric pooled at my feet. Hector's hungry gaze tracked every movement, his breathing uneven. No words were necessary, his thoughts were plain to see. Gently pressing him back against the couch, I marveled at how willingly he yielded, as if he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. The heat coursing through me defied description, a tidal wave of liberation that made me feel truly alive as a woman again. That first exquisite moment left me breathless, my eyes fluttering shut. I could tell Hector felt it too. Years of neglect made us both desperate. Neither of us held back. Soon we were both flushed and panting, too lost in passion for words. This was just the beginning, but already so perfect. When I finally let go again, my legs trembling, my nails scoring my own thighs in ecstasy, it felt like being reborn. Hector responded with boyish enthusiasm. After whispering encouragement in his ear, he surrendered completely, collapsing beside me in blissful exhaustion. We lay there laughing, drunk on happiness, knowing we had 2 glorious days ahead with only each other on our minds. This was merely the dawn of something extraordinary. Come morning, my eyes sought Hector immediately, finding him in the kitchen. I rushed to him without hesitation, because what had begun between us was far from over. There are still more beautiful chapters of this story left to tell.